Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the what and the how series in UiPath. For those of you who are looking the series for the first time, in this series I go and answer the queries which I received over my Instagram, over the comments or over the email. Previously we have done a couple of videos on this series. I have put all the links in the description for your reference. So let us see the agenda for this video and try to understand the problem statement, and then we quickly go to the solution as well. So for this problem, what I have got is I have an Excel file which I have placed in D data and the Excel file. This is how the input Excel file looks like. So it has some couple of columns, code, total, unit, price and the serial number. Now if you notice this data, it seems a bit awkward because usually what happens, the serial number is something which is at the beginning and the total is something which comes at the end, right? So you might have guessed that what exactly is the problem and what do we want to do. So basically we want to move this column into the first place and we want to move this column at the end. Now you might be thinking we always can do it with the help of Excel automation where we simply can read this column, write it, we can read this column and write it here, right? So that is one obvious way of doing that if your columns are less. But think it like that, you have a data table which is having a lot of columns and you want to reshuffle the column, or in other words, you want to reorder the column. So then it will take a whole lot of Excel automation. Is there a better way? The answer is yes. We can actually use UiPath data table activities to do the manipulation, which means that we would be reading this data in a data table. Once the data is available in the data table, then I can actually use some of the methods to reorder the column and then print the result back to the new sheet, right? So I hope you understand what is the problem statement and what exactly is we are going to do in this video, right? So let's try to go ahead in the UiPath Studio and try to create this solution. First of all, let me go to here and I'll create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as reorder column and I say create. It is always a good practice to rename the workflows properly. Okay. Now, since my data is available in the Excel, the first activity which I am going to use is the read range, right? Why I am going to use read range? Because to read the Excel, we have read range. Now, since I already have Excel already installed on my computer, I have the privilege to use the Excel application scope. So I'll simply go and use the Excel application scope. In case you are new to the Excel automation and want to know more about Excel automation, I have this complete playlist which is available where we are explaining each and every activity and some real-time scenarios. So I have put the links for the Excel automation in the descriptions for your reference. Now, the next thing is Excel application scope is asking me, tell me where exactly is the Excel file. So I simply point it to this one. I go to my D drive, data, Excel file, and this is the Excel file which we have got here, right? Now, the next activity is I want to read the data. So I simply use an activity which is called read range. I am using Excel application scope. So I'll use this guy, Excel read range, drag and drop it here. Which is the sheet you want to read, right? So the sheet for me is sheet 1 and the data, I want to read the complete data. Let's configure some of the properties. Does my data have headers? Yes, we do have headers, right? This guy is nothing but the header. So we keep this to the default options. What is the output? The output is a data table. There is a quick shortcut. Hit Ctrl plus K and create a variable called dt_data. Now UiPath will automatically create a variable for you and the variable would be available in dt underscore data, right? And the data type for this one would be a data table. Okay, so the variable is created here. Now what is the next thing? The next thing is when we read this data would be coming in this format only: code, total, unit, price, and the serial number. What we have to do is we have to reorder the columns in this one. For that, let me go back to my browser and I want to introduce you something which is called the set ordinal method. Now, for some of you, it might be a extremely new thing that what is a set ordinal. So I'll try to explain my best. So I am in docs.microsoft.com. This is the official documentation of Microsoft. And since if you will see, whenever we read the data from the Excel, we get a data table. And all these are nothing but a data column, and these are called data row, right? So basically, if I have to rearrange this, I have to work on the data column. I figure it out and find it out that a data column, which is nothing but a column in a data table, has a method. That method name is called set ordinal. Okay, so the .NET data table has a data column. The data column has a method which is called set ordinal. It is a method, and as an input, it expects an integer variable. So this is the only thing which you have to remember as of now, that the data column has a property which is called set ordinal and it expects an integer. Now what does it do? It simply change the ordinal, which is this one. This method will change the ordinal or the position of the data column, whatever you have specified here. So for example, if I give it here 2, so it will move it to the third position because the index starts with 0. So if I put the integer value as 4, the column will move to the 5th position, right? So like that way this activity works. Absolutely simple activity. The method name is set ordinal. You just have to pass the column name, which column you want to move, and the number where exactly you want to move, right? Now let's come to UiPath and see what happens. So I have got a data table, which means that this complete thing is available in a data table for me. And when this data is read in a data table, so UiPath will assign this a column number, right? So this is your column number 0, this is your column number 1, this is your column number 2, and this is your column number 3, and this is your column number 4. Okay, so these are the column numbers. This is important because when we use the set ordinal, we would use these guys. So I hope you understand all of this, that what exactly are the column numbers and how we are calculating it, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now in UiPath, now the next thing which I have to do is I have to invoke this method which is called set ordinal. If I go to the activities, I do not have any such activity which I can directly use to set the ordinal. But in UiPath, we have an activity which is called invoke method. This inside the programming execute, we have an activity which is called invoke method. It simply means that invoke the method. So if you see here, the method which I am interested is set ordinal. So UiPath has given me this activity which is telling me that Mukesh, you can invoke any of the method with this activity. You just have to tell me what is the method name. Okay, so let me go back to the documentation. So the method name is set ordinal. I'll copy the method name and pass it here. That's it. Now if I go to invoke method and go to the properties, it has got a lot of properties here, right? So before configuring this activity, let me quickly give a brief about this activity so that will help us to understand more about the invoke method. This activity is used to implement the code which is not available in the standard built-in activities, right? We could not find the set ordinal there, so that is why we are using the invoke method activity. Now what this actually does, it's called the public method of the specified object or the type, right? So in our case, the method which we are using is the set ordinal. Now these are the inputs, or I would say the properties which the invoke method would expect. The first thing is definitely the method name. What do you want to do? The next thing, there are two parameters. One is the target object and other is the target type. One point to remember here is that whenever you are using the invoke method activity, either you can use the target object or you can use the target type. You cannot use both of them together. Now the question arises why that is so, right? So if you read this description, it simply says that target object is used when you want to invoke the non-static methods, whereas target type is used when you want to invoke the static methods. For those of you who are coming from a .NET or a C# background, you might understand that a non-static method is something where we need to first create an object of the class and then use it, whereas in the static one there is no need to create an object. So that is why invoke method says either you can be a static or you can be a non-static. So you can either use the target object or you can use the target type, right? So method name, target object and the target type. The next one is the generic type arguments, right? This is the same, the collection of the arguments, that what exactly you want to pass in the form of a collection. So these are nothing but the input arguments to the input methods. Parameter. The parameter is what all values you want to pass to the method to be invoked. And lastly is the result, that what is the result of the method execution. True, false, successful, not successful, the data table manipulation. So in our case, if the execution is successful, as a result, my columns would be shifted and moved accordingly, right? So this was a quick introduction about the invoke method activity, right? So I hope you understand this. Let me just go back to the UiPath Studio again. Now the method name, as we have already provided, that we want to use the set ordinal method, right? How do I know? We just read it in the Microsoft documentation. Now this set ordinal works on the data column properties, right? That what is the name of the data column. So for us, let's try to first move this column, right? So this column name is serial number. So serial number is a column which I want to move to the first position, which means that the serial number should be available at the 0th position because the index starts with 0. But if you see here, when I read the data, I have the data table, but this method expects a data column. So if I pass the data table here, it won't work, right? So now either we can use a target type or the target object, right? So that we have clearly specified. So this time I'm going to use the target object. In the target object, let me click and open advanced editor. What I'm going to do here is whatever data I have, which is in DT data, this is the complete data table, right? Dot columns. This will give me all the columns, which means that now I have all these columns. Which column you want to move? I'll put it here, and it is asking me give me the name as string, which means this method is asking me, Mukesh, give me the name of the column as string. Do you see it is written in bold? So it is a string, so I'll put in double quotes and I'll simply write SNO. Why do I write this? Because that is what is the column name. In case your data is not having the column name, you can always use here the column number as well, right? Instead of using column name, we can always use the column numbers as well. Now, if you remember the invoke method activity, this guy set ordinal expects a data column. So yes, we have provided a data column. The data column name is the serial number, and I simply hit OK. Now let's go to the next setting. We have told UiPath that I want to set the ordinal for this column, but I have never told where I should move it, right? We want to move it to the first position. We never told UiPath that. How do I do that? You simply go to the invoke method, you go to the properties, and here this is what it is called, the parameters. I click on this one and you would see here, as I click, it automatically creates a variable for me. The direction is the input, and if you see here, I require a input as an integer 32, right? So I simply go here and change it to integer 32. Now it is asking me what is the number, which means where do you want to move the column? So I want to move the column to the first position, which is nothing but the 0th index, right? So I'll go here and I write as 0. I hit OK and my job is done. So that is how easy it is to set the ordinal. I hope you understand that what we just did. We first went to Microsoft, we found the method which was the data column dot set ordinal, and the method signature we just got it from the MSDN. Now I came back here, I use an activity called invoke method. I provided the method name which is set ordinal. This set ordinal expects you to provide a column. So I got the column from the data table using the dot column method, and here in the properties, in the parameters, I have changed this thing to integer. The reason for changing is that because here it is integer, right? I hope you understand this thing. Now let me quickly save this and I'll say that this is an invoke method for the serial number. So if I run this program, this should come here. Now my next requirement was I need to move the total to this position, right? To the 4th position. Let's do that. I'll quickly make a copy of the same activity that we can always do in UiPath. Go to the properties and this one I would say total. That's it. Now which column, right? So this time instead of moving the serial number, we have to move the total column. So I can simply go here and I say total. Hit OK. That's it. Method is same. The only thing which will change is the input parameter. So I'll go to the parameter, click on here, and it is asking me, tell me where do you want to move it, right? This integer, if you remember, this integer moves it to the specified position. So I have to tell the position. The position is now 4th. I hope you understand why it is 4, because I want to move it in the 5th position and the index start with 0. That's it. Now output of this activity would be a data table which will already get set as per the set ordinals. Now the next thing which is remaining here is to just write this data back to an Excel. To write the data, we use an activity called the write range. I am using Excel, so I'll use this write range here, right? And if you see here, write range is asking me, tell me Mukesh, where do you want to write the data? I want to write the data in sheet 2, which is absolutely blank. So I'll keep it to the default settings. I want to write the data from the first cell and the data table. So if you see here, all the data manipulation we have done in the DT data itself, right? So as in here, I will simply write DT data. Let's quickly go to the setting of write range and do one more setting which is called add headers. I want to tell UiPath that when you are writing the data, please consider the first row as the header. Okay. So this completes my automation. Okay, which means that it will read the range. Let's quickly revert the data. I'll just delete the extra columns which we have created. Okay, I'll save, hit a quick save. So let's have a quick read through of the automation. We have used an Excel application scope to read the Excel. Read range is giving me a data table. We have add the headers. Now we have used an invoke method activity to simply move the column from one position to the other position. Invoke method activity will ask you the method name, which is set ordinal. it expects a column name, but I had a data table. So from the data table dot columns, get the column name. So this will give you the column, and then simply in the parameters you have to give the integer number. Why integer? Because it expects an integer, right? And what is this integer? Simply means where do you want to move. The same thing we did for the total as well. And once the columns are set, we simply come back here and write it back to the same Excel which is here. Okay, let me just quickly do a save this automation, and let's try to go here and I say run the file. We'll just wait for the automation to complete. The automation has started and it completed as well. Let me quickly check the output. Yeah, I don't have any exceptions here. Let me go back to the Excel, and the sheet 1 has the data in the proper format and sheet 2 is blank, because when we were writing the data in the sheet 1 we forgot to give the correct sheet name, so it actually went and replaced this sheet only, right? So I hope you understand the concept. If you can see, the serial number is moved to the first position and the total is now moved to the last position. In case you want to again check whether it is working fine or not, let's quickly go here and try to move the serial number. I'll move the serial number to the second position maybe. Okay, and I'll try to move the total to some different position. So let's try to move the total at the beginning. Okay, let's try to move the total at the beginning, and this time I'll rectify this to sheet 2. Okay, so that we are able to clearly identify the results. I go here and I simply say run the file. So this time again we are changing the position of the serial number and the total and writing the data in the sheet 2. Okay, automation completed, and you could see here like this. The total is now at the first position, serial number is at the 1012 second position here, right? So that's how this activity works. Absolutely simple activity. I hope you understand this. Now there is one important thing which I want to ask you guys, I would say, and you guys have to tell me the answer in the comments. Okay, in my data table I only have 1 2 3 4 5 columns. What happens if I go to the invoke methods and in the parameters I change it to some value, let's say 8, right? I am telling UiPath to move the column to 8 position, but my data table is only having 1 2 3 4 5. When the data is ready in a data table, it will have only 5 columns, and this time I am telling UiPath to move it to the 8th position, which is not available, or the 9th position, because it starts with 0. Yeah, so now before I run it, I want you guys to let me know in the comments that what would happen. Will it run? Will it throw an exception? Just pause the video and let me know in the comments. So I hope you have written it. So I'll just wait here. Let's see. Yeah, sheet 1 has this 1 2 3 4 5 columns. We have changed only the number to 8 here. Let's see what happens, and we'll see that what kind of exceptions we are getting. I'll go here and I simply say run the file. The automation has started and I have got an exception. So if you see, it clearly gives a message which says that out of range exception. It says that ordinal 8 exceeds the maximum number, meaning that when I read the data table, I only had 1 2 3 4 5 columns, and you are trying to move the column to the 9th position. So that's why I am getting an argument out of range exception, right? So to use this activity, you must be very much sure that which coordinates or which ordinal you are moving the column to. Also, to handle this situation, the better way is to encapsulate all this thing in a try-catch block that will do the proper exception handling. Now again, in case you are new to exception handling, I have these dedicated playlists both in English as well as in Hindi language explaining the exception handling. You can just watch this video to get a better clarity on the exception handling. So that is it for this video. I hope you understand how to move a column in a data table with the help of set ordinal activity, and how do you use the invoke method. In case you have any more question on the context, and if there is any such question which you want me to answer in this series of what and how series of UiPath, feel free to drop me a comment, or you can always write me an email as well. Having said that, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.